Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. I got this email from Matthew Mower. How many types of people in the Millennium? And then in the email, thank you so much for your YouTubes. I recently watched your YouTube titled Elder Patrick Kieran's first statement or statements on the second coming. It was fascinating. However, I was a bit confused about the quote from Bruce R. McConkie, the Millennial Messiah, the second coming of the Son of Man. Would you be able to help me understand? Here's how I understand it. One, only those able to abide a terrestrial state will move to the millennium on this earth. That's correct. Number two, earth and all who remain will be translated. Procreation ceases. That's not correct. I'll show you in just a minute. We'll go back and look at that source. Number three, McConkie references quote unquote state akin to translation. We'll look at that too. And I put together a new spreadsheet to hopefully clarify, because a lot of, and it's not just you, Matthew, there's a lot of people that have a hard time picturing like what the millennium is going to be like. And that's understandable because the information is kind of scattered all over the place, but hopefully I have it all consolidated here and will help it be easy to be understood. Okay. Number four, some will continue to have mortal untranslated children. No, children will be translated. Okay, and then he continues, I thought I had understood that there were two types of people on the earth at this time, resurrected immortals and translated waiting for the change. Correct. Those who died before the age of accountability and perhaps all the way up to an adult age would be resurrected to a celestial body. Those above the age of 8 would be a body commensurate to their lives and worthiness, but in an infant size, excuse me, and worthy parents will raise them to adulthood. That's correct. And for some reason, there's been like an issue with that lately. I'm not sure why, but yes, you're going to be able to raise your children, and when they're resurrected, they'll be as they were when they died. It's pretty clear. We're going to go over that as well. There's always things that I don't understand why they're questioned, and this is not against you, Matthew. I've seen like a thing about that. Okay. He says, so long way to question. There are translated beings that still have children by mortal conception and birth. It seems in conflict that the earth and all those who remain will be raised to a translated or terrestrial state and therefore cease to have children. Yeah, no, they will continue to have children. We'll see that in just a minute. Enoch and all those with him ceased having children, right? It would seem so. They're different from those like us that will be living in the millennium. That's a different case. I'll explain that in a minute. Seems like a temporary form of damnation. Progression stopped as compared to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, etc., who sit on thrones and are having their own spirit children. Is my question or confusion clear? Thank you, Matt. No, I followed it. So let's just take it from the top. Okay, so let's start with Bruce R. McConkie's explanation of the two type of people that'll be on the earth during the millennium. Okay, so he says some mortals have been translated. Okay, let's take a look at this. Let's look at my new spreadsheet. This is called Millennium People. Okay, so let's focus on, this red area right here, before the millennium. This is what you have. Right now, there are three types of people. You have pretty much everybody that's like you and me, not translated, and we are in a telestial condition, right? And then there are some people before the millennium that have been translated. Once you're translated, you are in a terrestrial condition. Okay. You're not yet resurrected, but you're not in a telestial condition. You are in a terrestrial condition, just like Adam and Eve before the fall. The whole earth was in a terrestrial condition. The earth, people, animals, everything was in a terrestrial condition. After the fall, everything went into a telestial condition. So some people have been translated before the millennium. There are other names for translation for some reason people want to like make these different things, but they're not. So you have translated, also known as changed, also known as quickened, also known as transfigured. Now, people right now, before the millennium, cannot procreate. The reason why is because they've already lived a full life. They've already had children in mortality. They already had children. So you can't have people living for thousands of years continually having mortal children. Does that make sense? So it's like they have their period, just like everybody else does, in which they live a regular mortal life. They have children, they have families, but they can't be having mortal children for thousands of years. So it stops. People that have been translated before the millennium are people like Enoch, Melchizedek, Moses, Elijah, etc. So, and that includes obviously the city of Enoch, the city of Melchizedek, and others. And they're translated until either their mission is complete, as is the case of Moses and Elijah. They had to have a physical body in order to transfer their priesthood keys at the Mount of Transfiguration to Peter, James, and John. That's why they were translated. So after that, they would have been resurrected at the time of Christ and his resurrection. This is according to Bruce Armour Conkey. And then all these other people, Enoch and his city, Melchizedek and his city, as far as we know, they didn't have specific missions, and that's not why they were translated. It's just simply that's how things were in the beginning. You would be translated, and then at the time of Christ, you'd be resurrected. And so all these people are now in a resurrected state. And then, aside from them, also before the millennium, you have the three Nephites, John, and possibly others that we don't know about, that are translated, performing special missions until the second coming. And just like I said before, the three Nephites and John can't keep marrying people and having children for all this time. Their mortal life is over. Now they're doing something special, and that's why they're translated. Okay. And then the third class right here, you do have people that have been resurrected. So far, only celestial resurrections have taken place. And another name for resurrection or being resurrected is immortal. Okay, so before the millennium, you have these three types. Okay, let's continue. So some mortals have been translated. In this state, they are not subject to sorrow or to disease or to death. No longer does blood, the life-giving element of our present mortality, flow in their veins. Procreation ceases. If they then had children, their offspring would be denied immortal probation, which all worthy spirits must receive in due course. They have power to move and live in both a mortal and an unseen sphere. Right? So they can be seen, they can also be unseen. All translated beings undergo another change in their bodies when they gain full immortality. This change is the equivalent of a resurrection. All mortals after death are also resurrected. In the resurrected state, they are immortal and eternal in nature, and those among them who are privileged to live in the family unit, so those that are exalted, have spirit children. Okay, so far he's talking about people before the millennium. Okay, now, millennial man will live in a state akin to translation. His body will be changed so that it is no longer subject to disease or death as we know it, although he will be changed in the twinkling of an eye to full immortality or resurrection when he is 100 years of age. He will, however, have children. So you understand, he's saying basically it's the same thing as these people that were translated before the millennium. The difference is that you will have children, in that you're going to live until 100 years of age. So let's go back to the spreadsheet. Okay, so we were talking about Enoch, Melchizedek, Moses, Elijah. They were in a translated state for a very long time, potentially thousands of years, until they completed their mission, like handing over, conferring priesthood keys, or just waiting until the resurrection. So they were in that state for a long time. But in the millennium, you and I, if we make it into the millennium, and I hope that you and I do, we're not going to be in a translated state for thousands of years or hundreds of years. We're going to live until we're 100 years old. And then at that point, we die, but it's not the same type of death as what we have now. You're not buried in the grave. You're changed in the twinkling of an eye. And you go from this mortal state, this mortal translated state in the millennium, into your resurrected immortal state. Right? So that's the difference. These guys, hundreds, maybe thousands of years translated until the resurrection. In the case of the three Nephites and John, until the second coming at some point. But for everybody else, in the millennium, you live until 100 years old, and then you're changed in the twinkling of an eye. Does that make sense? So these are like special case people before the millennium. But in the millennium, this is the standard. Just like the standard right now is just being in this telestial condition and you can die. The standard is now going to be being in a terrestrial condition and translated. Okay. So let's, where were we? Let's continue. He will, however, have children, and mortal life of a millennial kind will continue. We will speak more particularly of all this shortly. During the millennium, there will, of course, be two kinds of people on earth. There will be those who are mortal and those who are immortal. So in other words, us right here, right? The translated terrestrial condition people that are still in mortality, and then the immortals, the resurrected people. Okay. So there will be those who have been changed or quickened or transfigured or translated. Words fail us to describe their state. So here he's saying that these words all mean the same thing. I don't think that they're different things. So there will be those, and those who have gone through a second change in the twinkling of an eye, so as to become eternal in nature, right? So again, mortals that have been changed, quickened, transfigured, whatever, and resurrected people. There will be those who are on probation, for whom earth life is a probationary state, and who are thus working out their own salvation, and those who have already overcome the world and have entered into a fullness of eternal joy. There will be those who will yet die in the sense of being changed from their quickened state to a state of immortality, and those who have previously died and are then living in a resurrected state. There will be those who are subject to the kings and priests who rule forever in the house of Israel, and those who, as kings and priests, exercise power and dominion in the everlasting kingdom of him whose we are. There will be those who, as mortals, provide bodies for spirit children of the Father, for the spirits whose right it is to come to earth and gain houses for their eternal spirits, and those who, as immortals or resurrected people, Abraham is one, are already begetting spirit children of their own. There will be those for whom the fullness of eternal glory is ahead, and those who, again, like Abraham, have already entered into their exaltation and sit upon their thrones and are not angels, but are gods forever and ever. We have heretofore summarized such things as we know about the immortal beings who shall dwell from time to time on the earth during the millennium. We shall now consider such things as have been revealed with reference to those who are born and who live here during the 1,000 years of plenty and peace. Okay, so it's just as simple as this. There are only two types of people that are in mortality, people that have gone on past mortality. People that are still in mortality are now translated. They're living a millennial type of life. They are continuing to have children. Those children are also in a state of being translated because the entire earth is translated. The earth, all the animals, all the people, all the children, it's now a completely new phase. We leave the telestial condition behind. So mortals and immortals, translated and resurrected. Okay, so as far as this part where you said Enoch and all those, with him seem to have had children, right? Seems like a temporary form of damnation. I wouldn't say that. I would say that they have the privilege of being translated rather than dying and going to the spirit world. So yes, their time of having mortal children was over after they were quickened and changed, but the alternative would be not being translated, dying, going to the spirit world, and not having children there. So does that make sense? They had their time. They had their time to have mortal children. So it's all good. Okay. One other thing I want to point out is that so far, before the millennium, only celestial resurrections have taken place. And that's going to continue into the millennium for a time. And then later on in the millennium, those that are terrestrial, that are going to have the terrestrial glory, then they will be resurrected later on. And then after the millennium, you will have the telestials and the sons of perdition that have their resurrection. Okay. And I can only assume that after the millennium, it's going to be basically the same as the millennium, where everybody is still translated in a terrestrial condition. They can procreate and live until they're 100 years old. And then all these resurrected people over here. Okay. So hopefully, I hope that clears it up. Now let's talk about children. Okay, so this is pretty clear. It's been stated many times, and we're going to go over what I have collected so far. I think this is a very comforting thing for parents that have children that have passed away before their time, because you feel robbed of that opportunity to raise them. And Joseph Smith, in fact, all three Joseph Smiths, Joseph Smith, Joseph F. Smith, and Joseph Fielding Smith have all clarified what happens. So here we have Joseph Smith in Scriptural Teachings of the Prophet Joseph Smith, pages 199 to 200. As concerning the resurrection, I will merely say that all men will come from the grave as they lie down, whether old or young. Okay? So you're going to come out the same way that you went down. There will not be added unto their stature 1 cubit, neither taken from it. And all will be raised by the power of God, having spirit in their bodies and not blood. Children will be enthroned in the presence of God and the Lamb with bodies of the same stature that they had on earth. So if you think that resurrection just automatically makes you an adult, it doesn't. That's not how it works, according to Joseph Smith. That's pretty good authority. Having been redeemed by the blood of the Lamb, they will there enjoy the fullness of that light, glory, and intelligence which is prepared in the celestial kingdom. Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord, for they rest from their labors, and their works do follow them. Okay, so Joseph Smith. Let's look at the next one. Okay, this is from Joseph F. Smith in a book called Gospel Doctrine. Pages 571 to 572. He was president of the church, or in other words, the prophet. And he says, under these circumstances, our beloved friends, we are now deprived. Under these circumstances, our beloved friends who are now deprived of their little one have great cause for joy and rejoicing, even in the midst of the deep sorrow that they feel at the loss of their little one for a time. They know he is all right. They have the assurance that their little one has passed away without sin. Such children are in the bosom of the Father. They will inherit their glory and their exaltation, and they will not be deprived of the blessings that belong to them. For in the economy of heaven and in the wisdom of the Father, who doeth all things well, those who are cut down as little children are without any responsibility for their taking off. They themselves, not having the intelligence and wisdom to take care of themselves and to understand the laws of life, and in the wisdom and mercy and economy of God, our Heavenly Father, all that could have been obtained and enjoyed by them if they had been permitted to live in the flesh will be provided for them hereafter. They will lose nothing by being taken away from us in this way. This is a consolation to me. Joseph Smith. Okay, now he's referring to Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith, the prophet, was the promulgator under God of these principles. He was in touch with the heavens. God revealed himself unto him and made known unto him the principles that lie before us, and which are comprised in the everlasting gospel. Joseph Smith declared, not Joseph F. Smith, Joseph Smith declared that the mother who laid down her little child, being deprived of the privilege, the joy, and the satisfaction of bringing it up to manhood or womanhood in this world, would, after the resurrection, have all the joy, satisfaction, and pleasure, and even more than it would have been possible to have in mortality, in seeing her child grow to the full measure in the stature of its spirit. So here we have twice from Joseph Smith himself talking about this. Continuing, if this be true, and I believe it, what a consolation it is. Jesus Christ was the Son of God before he came into the world, yet he came as an infant, grew and developed into manhood, and when this spirit departed from its tabernacle, it went to proclaim the gospel to the spirits which were imprisoned, possessing all the intelligence, powers, and faculties which it had in the flesh, except the possession of the body, wherein he became absolutely like unto God. And so I believe it is with all men who come into the world. Every spirit that comes to this earth to take upon it a tabernacle is a son or a daughter of God, and possesses all the intelligence and all the attributes that any son or daughter can enjoy, either in the spirit world or in this world, except that in the spirit and separated from the body, they lacked just the tabernacle of being like God the Father. It is said that God is a spirit, and they who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. But he is a spirit possessing the tabernacle of flesh and bones, as tangible as a man's, and therefore, to be like God and Jesus, all men must have a body. It matters not whether these tabernacles mature in this world, or have to wait and mature in the world to come. So here it is again, maturing after death in the resurrection. According to the word of prophet Joseph Smith, the body will develop either in time or in eternity to the full stature of the spirit. And when the mother is deprived of the pleasure and joy of rearing her babe to manhood or to womanhood in this life through the hand of death, that privilege will be renewed to her hereafter, and she will enjoy it to a fuller fruition than it would be possible for her to do here. So I'll end it there. Like it continues a little bit, but we'll end with that. Joseph F. Smith quoting Joseph Smith. And now we're going to go to Joseph Fielding Smith. This is in Doctrines of Salvation, Volume 2, pages 253 to 254. Exaltation of Children. Little children who die before they reach the years of accountability will automatically inherit the celestial kingdom, but not the exaltation in that kingdom until they have complied with all the requirements of exaltation. For instance, the crowning glory is marriage, and this ordinance would have to be performed in their behalf before they could inherit the fullness of that kingdom. The Lord is just with all of his children, and all little children who die will not be penalized as the Catholic Church penalizes them simply because they happen to die. The Lord will grant unto these children the privilege of all the sealing blessings which pertain to exaltation. We were all mature spirits before we were born. So in other words, like adult spirits. And the bodies of little children will grow after the resurrection to the full stature of the Spirit. And all the blessings will be theirs through their obedience, the same as if they had lived to maturity and received them on the earth. And then later on, there's this section called Children in the Resurrection. When a baby dies, it goes back into the spirit world, and the spirit assumes its natural form as an adult. For we were all adults before we were born. Okay, this says bomb because when I copy and paste, like when you go to archive.com and copy it, like it, to make a long story short, basically it's like it looks visually at the page and then it transcribes it, and that's what I copy. And so sometimes there's mistakes like that. Okay, so whatever. When a child is raised in the resurrection, the spirit will enter the body, and the body will be the same size as it was when the child died. It will then grow after the resurrection to full maturity to conform to the size of the Spirit. If parents are righteous, okay? If parents are righteous, so in other words, you can lose this due to your own iniquity. If parents are righteous, they will have their children after the resurrection. Little children who die, whose parents are not worthy of exaltation, will be adopted into the family, into the families of those who are worthy. That's something to think about. I keep talking about, things to expect at the second coming. There's a lot to wrap your mind around with all the changes that are coming. You have the earth that's going to change. Our bodies are going to change. Animals are going to change. The earth, like the continents and the islands, are going to come together, right? That's pretty crazy enough. But on top of that, there's going to be incredible changes in families and relationships because the people in your life that are celestial are not going to be here anymore. And undoubtedly, there are children out there that have celestial parents. They're going to be left without parents at the time of the burning. It's just a fact. I wouldn't be surprised if most of us adopt children in the second coming. That's something to think about. There's going to be a rearranging of families, and it's going to be dramatic. Sorry. But it's kind of like when you read in Isaiah and other scriptures where it talks about Jerusalem and Israel. And I think that really applies not just to the land and to actual, like the Jews and the land of Israel, but the church, that the desolate places, desolate families right now are going to be revived and everything's going to become fruitful like a garden. And I think that's going to include things like this, like adopting these children that are left without any righteous parents. Something to think about. There's some more. Let's see. This is Bruce R. McConkie, The Salvation of Little Children. When and with what stature will children be resurrected? Because they will receive a celestial inheritance, they will come forth in the first resurrection. President Joseph F. Smith said, and then he quotes what we just said. So it's repeated by Bruce R. McConkie. Let's see. We have Thomas S. Monson, Think to Think, October 1998 General Conference, first counselor in the first presidency at that time. He says, "There is only one source of true peace. I am certain that the Lord, who notes the fall of a sparrow, looks with compassion upon those who have been called upon to part, even temporarily, from their precious children. The gifts of healing and of peace are desperately needed, and Jesus, through his atonement, has provided them for one and all." The prophet Joseph Smith spoke inspired words of revelation and comfort. And then he quotes what we've already read. So this is a fact, okay? It's been said by all the Joseph Smiths. It's been confirmed by Bruce R. McConkie. It's been confirmed by Thomas S. Monson, right? And then we have this last one. This is Mark A. Matthews, The Salvation of Little Children Who Die. What we do know and what we don't, from the July 2021 Liahona. So this is pretty recent. He talks about Joseph F. Smith and the quote that we read where Joseph F. Smith quoted Joseph Smith. And I'm not going to read this because I think it's just kind of a repeat. It's just redundant. So it's pretty clear our doctrine about children and raising them in the millennium. Not sure why there's confusion about it. It's been said in General Conference and in the Liahona, and it should be pretty well known. But if there was any confusion about that, hopefully that's been dispelled. So, and hopefully all this has been answered. If you want to, you can always come back to this spreadsheet. The link for my spreadsheets, you guys, is in the description box of every video. You can view these. It's view only, but if you ever want to copy things, like if you want to copy these quotes or whatever, then please do it. And please help clear up confusion. There's so much confusion out there when it comes to certain doctrines. Copy it, put it on your Facebook, help people that don't know these the answers to these questions. Help them find the answer. And give it to them directly. Don't give your opinion or your logic or your problem solving. Give them the actual words of the prophets, because that's where doctrine comes from. It comes from the Lord through his prophets. Okay, that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.